Going to set up my recording. And then I have the honor and the opportunity to welcome everyone and say good afternoon, good evening, even in one case, good morning to all of you. We have one of our presenters is coming to us from Shanghai, China, so where it's early morning. Um, I'm Katie McGraw, and I know many of you were at the presentation last night, but for anyone who was not or who doesn't know me, I am Associate Provost for Research at Fielding, and I also coordinate our ISI Fellows Program. And so we have this delightful group of ISI Fellows who are all working on amazing projects in all kinds of areas of research, professional development, and consulting, and working on really important social issues and problems. And I am so excited that some of them are here to present some of their work. As I said, we did have a session last night. Some of you were there, and I think we'll see a lot of parallels and resonances in some of the presentations today as well. So maybe some continued conversations, but also lots of new insights. Um, Today we have three presentations involving four fellows, a joint presentation. And what I'm going to do is introduce each presenter and have them give us their presentation, and then we will take some questions and comments on that presentation and then move on to the next. If we have some time at the end, which I imagine we probably will, we'll continue our questions and conversation then. So, without any further ado from me, I will go ahead and introduce Dr. Akua Feathers, who is an alum of the HOD program, I believe. And she is going to share with us some information about her Black Women's Workplace Wellness Study. So, very excited to hear about that.
Thank you, Katie. I'm excited to talk about it. So let me share my screen. There we go. So I also like to see y'all's faces. So I'm going to put that back the way I had it. There we go. So this study builds directly on my dissertation, which focused on the lived experiences of Black women navigating the toll of gendered racism in the workplace. And so what I'm going to be sharing today are early results of this study. I'm going to share what's already showing up as positive change, what's still emerging, and what I'm going to continue to track over the next several months. So one quick note that I want to name before I really get started is I'm super intentional about accessibility. A lot of times academic research hides its impact behind language. And so my eventual report, as well as this presentation, are intended, it's on purpose that it's conveyed in really plain language. Data tables will be provided for anyone who wants the numbers in the report and in this presentation, but the meaning is going to be explained in everyday terms. I don't think that accessibility is about dumbing down research, but it's about widening the circle of who gets to understand it. And so I want anybody who picks up this information to understand it. So a little bit about the origin of my study. This was a 9-week study. I'll get into that for a minute. Let me go into what the origin was. So I proposed and eventually conducted this study because of my lived experiences and also what I learned during my doctoral research. Black women in professional spaces often carry this unspoken expectation to perform strength, to be excellent, to be composed, and also to be unbothered. Even in environments that are unhealthy or undermine their our belonging or dignity. And so through my dissertation research, I heard again and again and again that Black women are expected to lead, fix, and hold everyone else. And these expectations often translate into lived experiences of stress, anxiety, overwhelm, mental fatigue, and even physical harm. That's just to name a few. And so I wanted my postdoctoral work to move to the stage beyond describing the problem, because many of us have heard all of that before. It's not an unfamiliar phenomenon. So I wanted to move beyond describing the problem to the stage of testing interventions to see whether structured, intentional wellness planning could create measurable improvements in well being and resilience for professional Black women. And for many of us in the workplace, um, our workplace becomes a site of exhaustion. We often navigate environments that expect emotional composure, constant competence, and care for others. And the data shows that this navigation results in Black women reporting higher levels of workplace stress. And it also shows that Black women score high on measures of quote unquote resilience. And while that sounds like a good thing, what's being measured is typically survival, but not wellness. And so this research invites, I guess you could say, a reframe. What if resilience wasn't about pushing through, but rather about staying whole? And so the central question guiding this work was simply, does participation in a 9-week RAP-based wellness program help professional Black women maintain or improve their well-being at work? Now, this study is not suggesting that this is going to fix the gendered racism that Black women experience in the workplace. That responsibility is not ours to bear. What this study is looking to understand is whether it's beneficial for Black women's well being to have a self generated wellness plan while in those environments. So, what is RAP and why? Was it selected for this study? So RAP is an acronym and it stands for Wellness Recovery Action Planning. And it was developed by Mary Ellen Copeland, PhD, in 1997 and is now used in over 130 countries. It is an evidence-based, community-centered process and it is highly adaptable and it helps people to identify what wellness looks like for them, what throws them off balance or hinders their wellness, and also how to get back to center. It is a self-directed process, which means the individuals get to create their own plan by discovering or identifying their belief that they can get well and stay well, by learning how to speak up and take ownership of what they need to get well and stay well, committing to learn about themselves so that they can be more in tune with their needs in their efforts to get well and stay well, and also so that they can speak out for and also get assistance to help them as they get their wellness needs met. RAP is peer led, meaning people in the sessions learn from one another, even the co facilitators, because a part of the evidence based model is that two people facilitate this process together. Everybody in the room is a peer. So we all learn from each other. And in RAP's clinical study, people reported increased hopefulness, increased quality of life, and increased self advocacy, as well as reporting reduced depression, anxiety, and symptoms of mental illness. RAP combines structure with autonomy. It's accessible, it's trauma informed, and it aligns with how many Black women already build community through storytelling, self reflection, and shared wisdom. What's showing on the screen right now on the left, hopefully it's coming up for you on your left, are the 5 key concepts, which I kind of alluded to but expounded upon. And then on the right are the parts of RAP. And so I won't deep dive into those, but definitely have that information available for folks who are curious. Um, so let's look at the study. The study took place over 9 weeks. My initial proposal was for 12 weeks, but I got ISI and IRB approval to change it to a 9-week study. And that was just a decision I made before the study even started, obviously, just based on personal reasons. And also, the amount of time you are participating in a rap session is not impacted by whether it's longer or shorter. So uh, changed it to a 9-week study. And participants were professional Black women in the US between the ages of 35 and 65, excuse me. And they all worked in various fields, including education, politics, and consulting roles. And so the women joined a weekly 90-minute virtual group, which focused on different parts of the RAP process each week. They completed assessments before, midway, and at the end of the study, and they participated in focus groups. One was at the midway point, and one was at the end of the study. And as I mentioned, the sessions were co-facilitated by myself and another certified RAP. Um, they call it ALFs, advanced level facilitators. And again, that was done to maintain fidelity to the model. So this study, as you just heard me describe, is a mixed methods study, which means I combined numerical data and also participant stories to understand the impact of the RAP sessions more fully. So on the quantitative or numbers side, I used two tools that have been validated, which means they've been given the thumbs up by the research community as being effective. One was called the Oldenburg Burnout Inventory, or OLB, and that one measures exhaustion and disengagement and is suitable for broader life context, not just job-specific burnout. And then the Brief Resilience Scale, or BRS, measures individuals' ability to, quote, bounce back from stress. And so I picked these two because they gave me two sides of one picture, how tired participants were and how well they are able to recover. On the qualitative or storytelling side, I gathered participant stories through those focus groups I mentioned. Again, they were facilitated halfway and at the end of the study. So the conversations are currently being analyzed. So when I said these are the early results, that's because I haven't finished uh, analyzing the data. We just finished at the end of September was the last one. And so took my time to analyze the quantitative data, but the qualitative is currently in process. And so I'm using a similar approach that I did in my dissertation because it allows me to explore what the participants said. Oh, and I don't think I mentioned that it's a reflexive, thematic, and process and a content analysis. So that gives me the opportunity to explore what they said and also the deeper meaning behind their words. And combining these approaches allows me to see not just the outcomes, but the stories and strategies behind those outcomes, which connects the numbers to the lived experiences of the Black women using RAP as a tool for their wellness and resilience. So let's get to the data, y'all. This is my part right here, all the numbers and stuff. So this is what we found. I'm going to show on two separate slides, the OLB data and then the BRS data. Um, so here's what we found with the burnout measure. Across the group, no one entered the high burnout range. In fact, several participants' exhaustion or disengagement scores went down, suggesting that they felt more connected to their work and less depleted. Even those with scores that rose slightly remained in the low to moderate range, which means having a RAP likely helped prevent burnout from worsening. And that is a significant outcome during, within a demanding work setting. And so what you're seeing here are the changes in the total burnout scores from the first to the last day of the program. Because remember, this is the one that they only did once at the beginning and once at the end. And so each bar represents a participant, and you can see the number. I hope you can see the numbers because they're kind of tiny, but the numbers went down slightly for each person. There was one participant, participant 5, the last one on the end, on the right. Her scores did go up a little bit, but again, like I said, um, that isn't a negative thing necessarily. Um, it is showing, there's probably other factors that relate that happened in her life, but um, based on a lot of the qualitative data that I'm currently working through, but we do see some scores going up, and that's nothing negative with that. And so in the um, little grid to the right, hopefully it's showing up in your screen on the right, it just shows the amount of change that they experience. So the first four shows us the small initial change. And like I said, that last one does show some increase, but they did not, everybody stayed in that stable or improved ranges. So this is a success in burnout work because she didn't go into that um, unstable or unstable range. She still stayed within a healthy range. And so those are the data there. So what this tells us is that the RAP-based approach is helping these women stay grounded, stay engaged, and more resilient at work. And even, like I said, the small reductions matter because preventing escalation is just as valuable as reversing burnout. If we look at the BRS data, this is the one that measures resiliency. That word's a tongue twister sometimes. So this chart shows how each participant's resilience changed over time from the beginning, which this was the one that was, they completed this one 3 times from the beginning to the middle of the study and then to the end. And each line represents one of the participants, and you can see the overall direction of change. Most of the lines are either staying steady, going upward, um, even though there's that dip in there. And so 4 out of 5 of the participants finished in the normal to high range, which means that by the end of the program, they had gained or were practicing tools to help them recover from stress. One participant score, if you see, they declined slightly, but again, it doesn't mean failure. It just reflects how resilience fluctuates with different life demands. And then you see one participant just shot up drastically. That's the one on the far left, which means that she's adapting to these programs, practicing them, this process for herself, um, and adapting well to it. So the most important takeaway is that most of the women either sustained or strengthened their ability to bounce back during this 9-week process. And this can suggest that RAP not only supports short-term coping, but also builds ongoing recovery skills. Even moderate increases matter here also because this measures shifts in how quickly someone can regain or regain stability after difficulty. So the qualitative data that I am starting, I've tapped into it a little bit. Like I said, I haven't completed that fully, so I won't do a super deep dive into it. But the process that I'm using, I'm starting with open coding, where I go through each person's statements within the focus group and assign codes to what they say. So if there's a lot of people talking about overwhelming workloads, then that'll be a code. Maybe a lot of people are talking about unreasonable demands, that'll be a code. And then I cluster those codes into broader categories if there's similarity within those categories. And then I identify the key themes that emerge from participants' experiences. And I haven't finished that, and my brain is like, "Ooh, we could do something else." So I'm considering whether I'll also incorporate some complementary methods like emotion coding or RAP-aligned thematic mapping to capture more nuance in the participants' language. And emotion coding is if they use feeling words, if they're using words that describe and define how they're feeling in these moments, will I code that? And then the RAP-aligned thematic coding will be kind of like I sort of am doing at the bottom of this screen, where I'm taking the things that are specific to the RAP process and seeing what their responses aligns to. So deciding if I want to do that, trying to research, whether that is um, approved or, by the research community, those kinds of things. Or if not, then I'm going to start a new thing if I decide to do it. So my goal isn't to just label the women's responses, but to honor what they shared, preserving their tone, preserving their context and their meaning so that the analysis reflects their lived experiences of wellness, safety, and growth through the RAP framework. And so at the bottom, what I did was there were a couple of phrases that are aligned with the five key concepts of RAP, which are the foundation of RAP. Um, to offer about an early glimpse about how participants describe the sessions as affirming confidential spaces that allowed authenticity, relief, and connection. So far, early findings show growing wellness, small gains in engagement and resilience. We're learning from the number side that participants are they're showing these small gains and meaningful gains in engagement and resilience. And from the story side, participants shared that they benefited from having a clear process through RAP and from being in RAP's peer learning space where they felt seen, supported, and understood. The structure of RAP helped them to plan. The community helped them to believe, be believed, and to follow through. And so together, those two elements, the plan and the people, reinforce one another. And so the early evidence suggests that RAP may be a very promising wellness framework for Black women navigating gendered racism in the workplace. Now, I do want to mention that, like any pilot, this study has limitations. Our sample size is small. I had so many people sign up to participate, and then the five women that you saw represented in the data were the ones that consistently showed up for each session. And also the measures that I use. Um, both of them rely on self-report, which can be influenced by mood, they can be influenced by context, they can be influenced by perception. And also, even though they were both validated, neither was developed specifically with Black women in mind. And so that's, there's a key gap there in psychological measurement, even though they have been used with people from multiple geographic locations and cultural identities. It's not specific to Black women. Another limitation is that RAP works best if it's practiced, right? If we just create our RAP plan, I just learn about it, and then I don't actively live it, then I won't reap the benefits, right? If I don't eat my vegetables, no strong bones and teeth. If participants don't follow through with their plans, then that represents a limitation. Also, while the study measures burnout and resilience, as I mentioned earlier, other life factors outside of work, family stress, health complications, or community responsibilities, et cetera, finances, these things can also influence these scores. But still, if the data show sustained gains, it may point to RAP's potential to support wellness, even with life's broader challenges. So that said, these are early findings and they justify continued follow-ups, which are already scheduled for 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months to see if gains in resilience and reductions uh, in burnout hold over time. So over the next several months, I'll continue collecting follow-up data. My goal is to analyze the trends and expand the program for a larger sample, fingers crossed. And ultimately, I want this to inform how organizations think about belonging and care, not just as extras, but as essential components of equity. And I want Black women to see that wellness is not just another task or another thing on the to-do list, but it's a sacred practice. And so once we define those for ourselves, we get to build it for ourselves outside of cultural pressures to perform or endure. And that, my friends, concludes. I really appreciate you listening. And my hope is that this work reminds us to rest and reminds us that rest and wellness are not rewards for productivity, but they're prerequisites for sustainability. And yes, it is a wrap. So I look forward to sharing more info 3, 6, and 9 months. Thank you for your attention.
Wow, thank you. Gosh, that was amazing.
Thank you.
Fascinating. All kinds of words. What questions, comments, observations? Yes, Randall.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Akua. That was really interesting. I'm just wondering in the qualitative interviews, if any of the women reported that they saw people in the workplace perceiving them differently. I mean, if they're more able to handle stress and they're more resilient, one would think that that would show up somehow. And if people change their attitudes or the way their relationships, did you get anybody to report on that?
So I want to make sure that I understand your question. I think I hear you asking if the women reported that people see them differently than others.
No, not than others, but see them, the change in them, or if
Oh,
relationships have changed, or if they're more productive, or something where the organization and the people they work with somehow see a difference.
yeah, if wondering if the participants share that folks notice a difference. Yeah,
Right.
there was one person, one story that comes to mind. One of the ladies was involved in a mediation before the study even started, and she reported that they were having one of their mediation meetings, whatever that looks like, and in that session, the other party said something that usually would be responded to strongly. And
Mhm.
the person she said, and I don't remember the exact quote, but it was something like, "I remembered my wellness tools," and I didn't say anything. I let her have her say, and the person was visibly, um, I forgot, visibly changed. I don't know what the word she used was. And then after the meeting, she came up to her and began to apologize because that person was able to realize some of their errors or whatever. So that's
Yeah.
definitely reflected in the data. And there's a couple more of those instances where people notice, oh, wow, something different. So yeah,
Yeah, I would think it would have a great impact on the wellness of the organization. Maybe
yeah.
people would start looking at themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the outcome that shocked me, that hearing that the other person responded and reacted. I was like, oh, that's unexpected. So yeah, that was a gold mine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Uh,
Doc-
when Frederick Hudson created that book, Mastering the Art of Self-Renewal, I turned it into a workshop or intervention for my comps in 2004. This is an excellent topic. So when she mentioned about inventorying feelings, I immediately flashed back to in his book and through the 4 cycles that he has of emotional
Mm,
travel, the doldrums and cocooning and getting ready and going for it. That's an excellent inventory of feelings. And I actually used that because I had a lot of tragedies with the athletes I coached when I was at Fielding. I was
mm,
also coaching some collegiate athletes and some All Americans and some pros, and they go through problems all the time. And so resilience is one of those things, and this is a lightning rod topic, is we have to go transition from self-sacrifice to self-care. We need to understand, and you have to feel to heal. So when she mentioned that she wanted to go into a little more about people describing the feelings, I immediately thought about that book. And of course, he was the founder. The whole list is there. And so if you want to turn that into a questionnaire, you could probably do it in about 10 minutes.
nice. I would love if you could put in the chat, Dr. Michael, the title of that book again, please, so that I can capture it.
Yeah, it's hard to find now. I'm typing it up for you. It
Okay.
really, it really helped me in my transformation. As you know, I mean, fielding is a transformational experience. You know,
Agree.
it's that's really what, people talk about change and change agents, but you're not changing things for the worse, at least you're not trying. So getting to a higher level of whatever, your Zen is or achievement or your peace or your health, you're gonna find it at fielding. Um, And that's one of the things that we do better than traditional programs.
I agree.
So let me see what I'm typing here.
Thank
It's
you.
called the Adult Years, Mastering the Art of Self-Renewal. And that is by Frederick Hudson.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
And I don't know if I spelled his name right or not. But yeah, and then if you'd like, I can save you a lot of time. This was my comprehensive one. And I can just email you the workshop and it's all in there.
Please.
And it's got references. It's, well, I mean, we all did comp, so you know it has to be tight. Yeah, that's it. There you go. So yeah,
Thank
just
you.
shoot me your email and then I'll just attach the file because it's so powerful. I've had coaches and small professional athlete owners ask me about this stuff. Even the tough guys, everybody goes this. Don't let them fool you. I've trained.
Sure.
Mike Tyson asked for me to work out with him in Woodland Hills, and it was like, well, what's he doing? Well, actually, he was in court-ordered rehab, and he's a changed guy, believe it or not, but he just can't handle alcohol, and he's admitted it. Okay, so here we go. If you send me an email, I can just forward it to you because I send this thing out about 3 or 4 times a year, and people like it, but it can be a little confusing. You'll understand it, but we're at a kind of really a high level. It probably needs to be boiled down one more time. And I think that you would do a fabulous job doing that for the study as
Thank you.
as an additional page.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I
Yeah, that's it.
had a thought about, I mean, this is a much bigger project probably than you want to take on, but as I was listening to you talk about um, the possibility that things outside of the workplace were also affecting, you know, well-being and resilience and so forth. And after yesterday evening's presentation, particularly Dr. Eddington, although we certainly know all of the data about how, you know, pretty much everything in terms of, you know, social factors tends to fall more negatively on Black women than almost any other group. I'm wondering if there's any possibility that something like this could be expanded to incorporate some of those outside of the workplace, you know, needs that people have for well-being, particularly for Black women as that target group would need. So just a thought.
Yeah, 100%. RAP has been used with, I mean, you name the group, RAP has
Mhm.
been used to support their wellness, or they've used RAP to support their wellness. So it started out kind of focused in that mental health space where folks were having challenges with, you know, in life because of mental health challenges. And then it just, you know, blossomed into something that, I mean, veterans, folks in postpartum, perinatal, pregnancy.
Wow.
It's been useful in, you know, the justice system. So one of the things about creating a wrap for workplace wellness is you can't help but to benefit other parts of your life. And you can create a wrap just for myself at the workplace, just for myself when I'm, you know, outside of the workplace. So it absolutely can impact multiple parts of life. This one they're creating for the workplace, and they can create additional ones for, you know, different components and stuff for their life. So yeah, it's, I don't know if you can tell, but I love it. So,
That's clear. And it sounds amazing. Does anyone else
you.
have questions? Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Hakua.
Thank you. Thank you
Um,
everyone for your attention.
we will move on to our next presenter, Dr. Diane Burt, and we will, I guess, be also somewhat in the workplace setting. Her presentation is titled Integrating Applied Research in Vocational Education and Training. So we look forward to hearing more about that.
Thank you. Just share my screen. that showing up for you? Do you see the screen?
I can
Yes,
see it.
it looks
Yeah,
good.
okay, great. Okay, thank you. Okay, slideshow. Perfect. Okay, so so I'm Diane Burt. I live in St. John, New Brunswick on the east coast of Canada. And I've been working on this for quite a while. And so it's not a work in progress, it's a work complete, but I think it could continue to evolve. It's definitely a passion and an interest of mine. So I'll give you a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to talk about experiential learning to give you a little bit of background and how applied research fits into vocational education and training. And then I'll get to the study. And so I'm not going to get into too much of the the details in terms of what I did in the study, but more focused on the outcomes and what the findings were. So my objectives with you today are to explore applied research as a form of experiential learning and a pedagogical strategy in program delivery. So I am an educator, have been for a long time, worked in adult education for well over 35 years. And I've been in various roles as a teacher in post-secondary education, university, college, and also most of my career as a leader, an educational leader. So this has been a kind of a big part of my work for probably a little more than 12 years. I worked in applied research. So I was the director of applied research at a college that was just getting into it. So, having done my, my doctoral work in educational leadership and change, this was a big transformation for the college to move from very much focused on training to getting involved in community-based and industry-based research. So I'm going to sort of talk about 10 colleges across Canada who really are leaders in this, and some of the success factors that they shared with me for integrating applied research in VET to enrich student learning. And I should let you know that my focus really was on student learning, as well as engaging with community and industry and getting students engaged in their communities and with workplaces. And so it was not so much about, I think a lot of colleges are getting more into applied research, funding, and having dedicated researchers and working on funded projects. This is really more about how to do it in terms of a learning strategy. So that's why I sort of started with this idea of experiential learning. And most college faculty understand experiential learning is learning by doing. So it's like in community colleges in Canada, and I assume the same in the US from what I've read. It's very focused on application of learning. So hands-on, very applicable types of learning. But so it's really structured and applied learning experiences, but it really also needs to include reflection. It needs to include critical analysis and synthesis and thinking about it and tying the learning to something else in terms of past experiences or what they could do with that learning in the future. So I like to share that it's not a new thing. It's been around. Dewey talked about the relationship of actual experience and education. Paulo Freire talked about it as well, and of course Kolb's learning cycle kind of shows us that combination of experience, reflection, generalization, and application. So it is a well-known and relevant and effective process. So in college education or vocational education, students there's a lot around the experience and the experimenting, but not so much on the observation and conceptualization. And that's what I've been trying to think about, is how to bring that all together. And applied research is a great way to do that. So I created this kind of framework of different types of experiential learning because, as I said, faculty tend to understand some of that sort of foundational things that, okay, well, we can do these practice activities, we can have labs, we can have projects, but kind of bringing it up a level to this career readiness. So it's called work integrated learning. So it's where it's directly engaged with industry and or community. So that's, you know, service learning, but it is also a part of that. So for me, you know, this research was important because the faculty that I've worked with over the years they're practitioners first. You know, so they may come from a trade, you know, it may be a carpenter who's coming to teach carpentry. It may be an engineer who's coming to teach engineering. It could be a nurse who's coming to teach nursing. They all come with this really strong industry experience, and now they're teachers. So they're, you know, they're professionals in their industry first, and then they come to college education as a teacher. And so they're learning to be teachers. And so then when I start talking to them about research, they freeze up like, no, I'm not a researcher. This is not my thing. And so it was really important to me to help them understand. And so I stopped calling it applied research and started calling it, you know, project-based learning or problem-based learning, challenge-based learning, inquiry-based learning. It's a pedagogical approach. It's a way your students can learn. And so that's been, you know, I kind of created this to say, you know, it's sort of, it's helping them get ready to work, but, you know, it's a learning approach. So one of the, I guess the key definition when we think about applied research is it's not basic research. It's not doing research for the sake of exploring something or finding something new. It's really about solutions to existing problems. And in Canada, it's always partner based. So it could be with a nonprofit organization, it could be with a community organization, it could be with a school, it could be with industry, it could be with small business. Quite often it's with a small to medium-sized enterprise. But it's really has to be based on this partner having a problem, having some sort of need, and then the students can work with them to help find solutions. So, again, there's benefits to the industry or community partner. You know, it's definitely impacts, you know, social and economic development, but for the colleges or the, you know, vet institutions is really about enriching the learning experience for students. So one of the colleges that I've worked with, Fanshawe College, had this great research wheel, which I liked. And, you know, so this kind of shows you, you know, the scholarship and the creative activity are there too, but we would focus more on the right side, the applied and community-based types of projects. So it's really, it could be service learning, you know, social enterprise, commercialization, could be, you know, simulation, any kind of service improvements or new products. So again, the elements are the partner, the problem, the needs, and the solution. So the benefits, you know, there are all kinds of benefits in the literature. A lot of it was focused on industry and community, really about how it really strengthens, especially those SMEs in terms of their economic resiliency and competitiveness. Really helps communities. You know, I've seen projects where, you know, a small business, you know, we help them with a technology that then enabled them to grow their business, you know, incredibly. So, you know, there are things that, you know, just testing and all kinds of things, depending on the program in the college and the students' interests and capabilities. There are all kinds of things they can help with. And then certainly benefits for the institutions themselves. I really like, you know, the fact that when a faculty member has to work with a company to kind of set up a project, they're staying in touch with what those needs of that industry are. And so, it's keeping them current and relevant as well. And of course, there are all kinds of benefits for the students, and there have been many studies that show definitely an increase in student motivation. We know real problems would be more engaging than a textbook case study. So they make connections with the industry partner. It's almost like a lengthy job interview. And so quite often they get hired after they've worked on a project with a partner. So lots of benefits, and definitely helps them gain experience. So I threw in a couple of course descriptions just to give you a sense of what a project might look like. So in an engineering technologies program, there's a course called Lean Manufacturing Practices. And so the outcome is that the students must apply methods of lean thinking and continuous improvement to reduce waste and improve manufacturing processes. So what a great way to do that, by partnering with a manufacturing company, finding out what they might have as a need, and helping them reduce their waste or improve their processes. I had one example of a company that was looking for help, and they had grown, they had added on, they got new equipment, they added on a new part to their building, and they were growing and growing, but they found that as they, it was all sort of haphazard. So a couple of students took that on as a project and went in, they met with employees, they looked at the layout, and they prepared a report with 3 solutions, actually, sort of lowest cost, here's what you could do like tomorrow, and it would help improve things, all the way up to, here's how you could completely reorganize your plant. And so that's the kind of thing that they could do as a project. And in culinary arts, so there's a culinary arts management. This one is really tailored to a community project. And so the outcome is that they contribute a solution to a business or community organization, and, usually related to, to a restaurant or to a food producer. And in one case, as an example, students worked with a lobster processing company. And they didn't know what to do with the shells and the bodies. Everybody wants the nice juicy lobster meat, but the other stuff was just waste. And so they created different products that could be made from the shells and the bodies of the lobster. So that was a great outcome there. So that's just an example. So now to the study itself. So implementing this within a college. So as I said, I was tasked with leading this at college where I was working, and I was really interested in what other colleges across Canada were doing. And so I interviewed research leaders from 10 of the colleges that had been we have this list, top 50 research colleges in Canada. And so they were single and multi-campus institutions, populations from 3,000 to 30,000 students. I used an appreciative inquiry approach, really wanted to, I actually, used appreciative inquiry in my doctoral dissertation. And somebody yesterday was talking about that as well. It's a great approach, focusing on the positive attributes and sort of what's working well. And the idea is, if you can figure out what's working well, you can just build on that and not and really try to inspire change that way. So through that study, I identified 4 themes, and I put together some presentations. I used that information over the course of the next year or so, and continued to build on it. And then the following year, I had an opportunity to work with some vocational education and training institutions in Europe. And, they were very interested with what I had been doing. I had presented at a conference in Spain. And so they asked if I would work with them. So by the time they got a grant and they got their project off going, you know, a couple of years from the time I had done my initial interviews had passed. So I did a follow-up survey. I went back to those 10 colleges and said, I just want to validate, you know, what the findings were from the initial study. And so of course, some time had passed. So 3 of the 10 leaders that I had spoken to were gone and had replacements, but they agreed to participate. So again, I had 10 applied research leaders from the colleges, the same colleges. Just a quick visual. In Canada, we have 129 community colleges, but 542 locations. So some of them are multi-campus. So a total of 671 total places across the country. So my findings, the 4 themes, and these were all validated. There was really nothing new in the second round of conversations and the survey. But institutional commitment and leadership was the first one. Ensuring that the institution's leaders are committed strategically and operationally, you know, and that means there's money behind it, you know, that they're going to support it. The second one, instructor development and support. This for me was key because that when I found, you know, trying to get it integrated in our college early days, there was a lot of resistance, you know, feeling that it's an add-on, it's an extra. And so to try to help educate, to say it's not an extra, it's a value add, it's an actual way to help you do your job. And then the different approaches. So how can it be integrated into program design, delivery, curriculum? And the fourth one, the theme was collaboration. So both internal and external. So I'll talk a little bit more about each one of these. So I had read an article actually when I was doing my program years ago, many years ago, I guess 2011 or something. I finished. This article is by Margaret Wheatley, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with her work, but she wrote something about change and leading change, and how you can't force people to buy in. And you know, there's a line in that says something about like people only support what they create. So it's not just that people support what they create; they only support what they create. So that engagement is, to me, like that just was my mantra. And so, you know, starting with leadership, they have to be engaged in creating it, and in order to support it. So that one was really, really important. And some colleges had applied research as kind of a unit, like a separate department outside of the academic department, when it was integrated within the academic department. So basically reported into the VP academic, much more successful. So having that commitment, and strategically and operationally, was important. And then, as I said, the instructor development and support. So right off the bat, including it in new hire orientation. Most colleges have an instructor development program. As I mentioned, instructors come with, you know, with professional experience and expertise, but are not necessarily teachers. So in helping them become teachers, this is a way to help them, you know, sort of follow it as a pedagogical approach. And demystifying it, I think, was important. So, and then even right at the beginning, so when instructors are applying, you know, helping them understand this is part of our culture. In terms of integrating it into program design, some programs could actually offer research courses, or they have, you know, as I showed you, an outcome that is related to that. So looking at where it can fit in, and you know, certainly aligning it with other models that that faculty understand. And then interdisciplinary teamwork. So the best projects are when 2 or more programs work together. And we had that with that example I shared about the lobster processing. We actually had the culinary arts students come up with the recipes for these products. And then we had a business marketing program work on how they would package and market products. So, that's great when they work together. And then back to the Margaret Wheatley quote, you can't have these projects without partners. And so the engagement with the community was so important. And across Canada, everybody talked about, the building of this network of, and some companies would come back, regularly with new projects. So they would just say, yeah, we want to work with you all the time. We have constant need. So, and for different programs. So that's great when and especially in larger communities, in Toronto and, Vancouver and, those colleges in those larger cities are really tapped in. But even in smaller, some of the smaller rural colleges, finding like community, like I said, it's not just industry, it's community partnerships are important as well. And that's it. So any questions? Stop sharing.
Go ahead, Randall.
I think this is fantastic. It just seems so obvious. Why has education not done a lot of this? Because I worked in international development for many years, and we worked with vocational institutions. And it was like a totally new idea for them to relate to industry, which seems so obvious, but why? I mean, you've really done fantastic work.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. It's hard to understand. And some, like I said, some colleges, they get the connection to industry because there's a lot of federal grants, helping to promote it, especially with the small businesses, because that's a big, there's a lot of support for small businesses. So, but then it feels like too much work to say, okay, well, how do we set this up for students to do it? Like, we'll just hire a researcher and we'll just do it. But then it's not about it's not what we are about, because we are about learning and we are about helping our students succeed in their learning and in their career. So yeah, it's been fun.
Well, I'm glad the idea is spreading.
Mm-hmm. Brian, did you have a question?
I do, Diane, thank you. I spent 13 years in the Toronto area. I taught at Ontario Tech, which was really a close neighbor of Durham College.
Okay.
And so I had some experience with the colleges, and it's interesting. Colleges in Canada have a really unique mission compared to colleges and even community colleges in the U.S. And they in the universities and in Canada and in the U.S., research takes really kind of a different role. So I was wondering how unique do you think the results are to the unique role that colleges play in Canada?
I think they're pretty. I think it is what I found with these 10 colleges. I think translate across all of Canada to colleges, but I do also. There's an organization, I can't remember the acronym, but there is an organization of community colleges in the U.S. that they have undergraduate programming. So, they have their degree granting. So it is slightly different because our programs might be 1 or 2 years and those, some could have 4 years. So then it's different when you're looking at working with a third or fourth year student than someone who's, in their first or second year. However, that being said, most college students in Canada the average age is 25. So they're coming with experience. So it's not like they're 18 right out of high school. So I think there is some applicability in the US to some degree, but also I found in Europe, which was interesting. So, they were very interested in what we were doing, and they're trying to more to do this kind of work. So they also had started to create separate research streams, not engaging so much with the students. So it's I think it's easier to set up like logistically, okay, we're going to have a little research office and we'll have a couple of researchers and we'll work with industry. But to have that connection to the students, I think that's been the challenge. But I think it's the most important thing.
Thank you. Very interesting work.
Thanks.
Yeah, just to build on that, just for 1 second, and if folks are ready, we can move on. But as you were talking, it reminded me, not an area I know a lot about, but in the US, certainly with MBA programs, I know there's, quite a practice of working with corporate America companies and creating, basically consulting. But it's a very similar practice of solving a problem for a partner.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Project or problem-based learning, it's the same idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, congratulations. A really thorough, really
Thank you.
interesting work, and it certainly should be used.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions? I keep muting myself, sorry. Then we'll move to our last presentation, but also one that will be really interesting, from Dr. Randall Thompson and Dr. Jane Feng. And I'm going to read the title of their presentation because I'm fascinated. The Four Forces: Igniting Emergent Generative Team Leadership in a complex exponential world inspired by nature and the Tao. And I'm sure they will explain all of that to us, and I'm really fascinated and looking forward to it. So I'm going to bring up their slides and then I will turn it right over to you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Our presentation is actually deal with the business world. So if you move to, complex potential world, which is, if you look at the purpose of our presentation is, we actually have the privilege to share our latest work that is a book going to be published the next year. So it's talking about the four forces. And then we talk about emergent generative team leadership, which is EGTL. And a new term is talking about a team-led leadership approach. This is actually try to address the complexity emergent situation in the current world. And then we look at the four forces, which is hope, care, love, that fuel EGTL. And this concept is indeed inspired by nature and the Tao. And the Tao's mindset to help teams cope with change, complexity, and uncertainty. If you look at next page, that's our website. You look at the beautiful nature. You look at the igniting forces. And then, of course, everybody understand that's the Tao. That's the yin-yang unity, the oneness. Next page. Yes, over to Randall.
Okay. we recognize that, the business world has been forced to evolve to cope with increased complexity and uncertainty. Certainly with the advent of AI, we don't know where that's taking us or what the impact on corporations or on our lives as humans will be. So we're dealing with a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty. And we find that many corporations are changing to better cope with the complex potential world. I want to say that our third author is Kathleen Curran, who was unable to come today, but she and I were just in Portugal at a management summit in which leaders from all over the world were talking about the need for organizations to change dramatically to adjust to this complexity and uncertainty. So when you have this much uncertainty and complexity, you can't count on structure anymore to create stability. You have to turn more and more to relationships. So they become more important in order to create stability in any organization. And we find that teams are becoming increasingly autonomous, making decisions directly with clients without having to go through management. And this is also being facilitated by some of the AI. AI is, as I said, pushing teams to make key decisions. So teams now, with such rapid change, need to be more innovative and make decisions directly and rapidly. On the next slide, we'll see, so our premise is that teams need to have strong relationships to work well together. And we all realize that emotions underlie our relationships. And we need to learn to acknowledge and positively navigate these emotions in order to maintain lasting, productive, and satisfying relationships. As Macau said, the relational socio-emotional forces that have taken a back seat in the past are absolutely critical now. Without the capacity for forming relationships of trust, common purpose, mutual respect, and cooperation, the whole will never be greater than the sum of its parts. Social emotional resources are vital. So the next slide shows just a bit of background. During the pandemic, Kathleen Curran, our third author, and I noticed that there was a void in leadership in terms of our official leaders. They didn't know how to cope with the pandemic, and government wasn't meeting the needs of the people at the community level. So what we noticed was that there were a lot of, all over the world, community groups being formed, just automatically, people coming together to solve some of the major problems that the government wasn't solving in terms of food, getting food to people, healthcare to people, helping the elderly go on their computers to sign up for the COVID vaccines, supporting people on the front lines by helping them doing their home care and other things. And so what we found, what was driving these teams that were emerging were four socio-emotional forces. We call these the four forces: intent, care, hope, and love. Intent is really the will to reach a different place of shared understanding that declutters the space of preconceived notions, judgments, and personal agendas. Care is the relational and emotional, as well as a form of accountability. Caring for others is a responsibility. Hope is the active generative force characterized by lifting our gaze to the future with the will to achieve our intent. And then love is the generative force that connects us. It's a constant choice, and it's really the greatest power we can have. Whoops. I would like to say that Kathleen and I wrote about this in a fielding book about EGTL during the pandemic in the book called Driving Social Innovation: How Unexpected Leadership is Transforming Society by Marie Sonnet, Teresa Southern, and Patrice Rosenthal. And so that was our first iteration of EGTL. But it's come a long way as we go out in the business world and realize that organizations are shifting, so that this really is the most appropriate form for teams to lead. We can see the next slide. So what is it? EGTL is leadership exercised by a team that is influenced by greater than the leadership exercised by individual team members. It emerges in response to external needs, responsibilities, disruptions, or challenges, and generates creative solutions to those needs, responsibilities, disruptions, or challenges. So the team is really the leader, and team members exhibit leaderly behavior that contributes to the overall team leadership. And it's similar to complexity leadership, regenerative leadership, relational and systems leadership. And with the distinction that we argue that socio-emotional forces are the underlying fuel that drives this type of leadership. So we go into, I think, more than other approaches to leadership, into the underlying socio-emotional forces that generally are not topics of interest when you talk about teams, but we found them extremely critical in what actually fuels effective leadership. So the next slide. So here's the connection that starts to nature. We know that the functioning processes of nature are emergence and generativity. So all constantly in nature, complex systems and patterns are arising out of simple interactions between parts, and the feedback loops lead to new, often unexpected properties. And emergence catalyzes creativity, interconnectedness, self-organization, adaptation, and learning. So the concepts of emergence and generativity are being applied more and more to organizations as living systems. And we argue that in order for EGTL to function, also the organizations need to have an environment that allows emergence and generativity to freely function. So the next slide. Oh, sorry, generativity. So there's where we talk about the innovation. And you see this all over the place. Everyone's talking about you need to be innovative. Things are happening so fast. You need to have flexibility, resilience, the ability to create solutions quickly. And as AI pushes us, this is becoming more and more important. So generativity is more a proactive approach to change. So you're not only responding to the environment, but you're shaping it to move forward to constructive actions. So next. So okay, go ahead, Jane.
Yeah. So the question is why DAO matters? Because as Randall talked about the generativity, talk about emergent, in our research, then we find is exactly in sync with the DAO. And in Dao De Jing, it says Dao produce one and produce two, two produce three produce myriad things. So if you look at that premise, then you will find change is constant, emergent, generative, and everything is interconnected. And doesn't, because the universe is composed of East and West and across the planets, and everybody is connected in each different way. And then you have yin yang, and you have 自然, and you have wu wei. You talk about harmony, you talk about autonomy, and you talk about leaderless versus hero. That's exactly our EGTL challenge to the traditional leadership approach. So if you go on to next page, And then we connect the four forces and the Tao. And intent is actually in the Tao, it talk about Wu Wei, because in Taoism it say if you do nothing, but if you follow the natural way, and then with effortless actions and things can be done. And of course, because the universe, everything is interconnected, the selfless care would be important. And you show compassion, you show attending to others' needs and hope. And the universe itself is full of abundant with growth. You see the trees, you see the plants, everything just grows. So the hope is embedded in the growth and the evolution. And of course, love is the harmony, yin-yang balance. And when the world is full of a kind of harmony and everything is in balance, everything will grow. Next page. So in the business world, the Taoism's approach, what's the implication to Tao from what we learn from Tao and nature? That's the implication, and we see 7. That's follow the team's natural way, that's 自然, and we have Wu Wei to empower. And indeed, actually in the book, we have lots of examples, even in the current organization in China, as well as in the West, and talk about what they do to practice this kind of leadership and generate great financial and people results. So the third one is we talk about using that mentality to address change agility through self-organizing. And for sure, harmony was the key. I manage the team's yin-yang dynamics. It's about harmony. That's a manifestation of the harmony. And in the Taoism, the Wu Wei's approach is leader is seen as a role model, and which means they don't step into the team dynamics and they allow the team to address the issues by themselves. And of course, different from the hero mentality, in this EGTL leadership, they need to act in humility and endorse simplicity. Next.
Yeah. Before I get to conclusion, because we shortened this because we thought we only had 15 minutes, but so if you look at socio-emotional forces, right, you know, we can't teach those. We can't train people to have care and love. These are natural forces. You need a way so that people can experience, people on a team can experience these. So in order to introduce people to team-led leadership, we have a simulation in which they need to cross an island in Mexico together. And during the time, they have to form emotional bonds in order to succeed. They have to share the common intent. So they all are clear about where they're going and how they have to get there. Care develops because they're challenged. When we're challenged with things, just like during the pandemic and just like during rapid change, often we have to care for each other to get through that challenge or to get through the difficulty. So in our simulation, people start feeling the care toward each other. They have the hope that they'll get to the other end of the island, and that hope is really an active force. It gives them the courage to continue to walk even when they're faced with a possible hurricane, with mosquitoes, with crocodiles, whatever. And then love, they discover, is really the power that's knitting them together, that's making them have this feeling of a mindset shift from I as an individual to we as a team. So in order for organizations really to be able to implement these autonomous teams that are self-led and that don't have to depend on management to tell them what to do, but can rather develop their own intent. They have to be in a situation where they can experience these socio-emotional forces. And we argue that when they really experience them, they're emergent generative team leadership results. And they realize that they're empowered really to lead themselves, to develop where they're going, to develop how they can work together, that really shows responsibility to each other, to care for each other, where how they can generate hope that they can achieve their goals together. And it has implications on how they talk to each other, how they deal with conflict, how they deal with management, which still exists, but so they have to assure management that they know what they're doing and that management is justified to have them be autonomous and work directly with clients. So this is what our book, I think the e-version will come out in March and the hard copy in April, goes through in quite detail. How do organizations become more like living systems? How do they face the complexity and ambiguity of the world now? And how do they open up opportunities for their staff to be more creative and innovative? How do they, in fact, more mimic nature in allowing the forces of emergent generativity to function? And how can the Tao mindset and the Tao worldview really help people adjust to this ever-changing world of interconnections and relationships with people? So that's basically it. We argue that leadership is more effective this way. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both. Really interesting. Yeah. I see applause. Are there any questions? Thoughts, observations? I, for one, would love to see the simulation.
Oh, I wish yeah. We held it once for fielding.
Okay.
I think we should do it again. Yeah, it's always great because we're in the process of trying to get feedback still about
okay.
what works and what doesn't work in the simulation, what we need to improve. So we love people to participate. We're doing it for the International Leadership Association on October 21st.
Excellent. Well, we'll have to see. Maybe there'll be an opportunity, another fielding opportunity. That would be wonderful.
That would be great. Yeah. We're still learning, so it would be great.
As we all are. Well, does anyone have any other questions for any of our presenters, I guess, or any other thoughts or observations?
Just, are you going to share when the book comes out, where we can find it?
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
That's great.
Is it already published in hardcover in the Fielding Press? You said the ebook is coming, but is that a second press?
The one that's published in the Fielding Press was our earlier iteration of it, relating to its emergence during the pandemic. The book, the much more evolved development of the concept, along with how nature and Tao impact it and assist people to be team leaders.
Look forward to that. Absolutely. All right. Well, we've had fascinating presentations today, fascinating presentations yesterday, and I know there are many other projects going on. Hopefully we will be able to do this again sometime in early 2026. So those of you who are listening and haven't presented, if you'd like to, please look out for that. have a question in the chat, repeating the EGTL acronym. Could one of you spell that out again for us?
Emergent Generative Team Leadership.
Got it. I will put that in. I'm sure it's in your presentation, but I'll put that in here in the chat for for us to have. There we go. Okay, well, I think we have come to the end of today's presentation. So thank you again to all of our presenters, and thank you for everyone who was here, and all your questions and celebrations. There's so much great work going on, and it's so much fun to have these sessions. And I look forward to talking with all of you and working with all of you, and hopefully seeing you soon. So look for the recording coming soon, and let me know if there's anything that I can do to help any of you with your work. Take care. Have a
Thank
great
you so much. Thank you.
afternoon,
Thank you.
evening,
Thank
or
you.
day if you're in China.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.